Good day. So today we will tackle about the basics of business combination. So business combination is under PFRS 3, which is defined as a transaction or event in which an acquirer obtains control of one or more business, or also called the acquiree. Now, when we say control, it means the power to govern the financial and operating operating policies of the entity or of the acquiree. So dito, again, ang sabi daw dito, business combination is a transaction or event kung saan si acquirer, ibig sabihin ng acquirer, siya yung bumili kay acquiree. Acquiree could be one or more business. So, kapag nabili niya ngayon si acquiree, nagkakaroon siya ng control sa business na yun. So, ang sinasabing control is power to govern the financial and operating policies of the entity being acquired. Now, we have two ways to control a business unit. Again, we have two ways to control a business unit. First is through acquisition of net assets. So, ibig sabihin daw, yung binili ni acquirer is ang net assets ni acquiree. Kapag sinabing net assets, that is equal to assets less liability. So, take note, this net assets should be measured at fair market value. So, again, ang binili or inacquire ni acquirer is ang net assets, or kung sa basic accounting natin, the equity of the business. Number 2 is we have acquisition of outstanding shares. Acquisition of outstanding shares. Kung kanina, ang inacquire is net assets, dito naman sa acquisition of outstanding shares is shares yung ina-acquire. So, kapag ganyan, nagkakaroon ng tinatawag na controlling interest and non-controlling interest. So, dito sa acquisition of shares, typically, ang ina-acquire dito is more than 50% of the outstanding shares yung ina-acquire. Again, business combination is a transaction or event in which the acquirer obtains control over one or more business. So, magkakaroon lang siya ng control kapag more than 50% yung kanyang binili. So, let's say, yung binili niya is 60%. Therefore, may remaining dun na 40%. Yung 40% na yun yung tinatawag nating non-controlling interest. Wala na siyang control since mas maliit siya compared sa 60% na binili ni acquirer. Now, under acquisition of net assets, we have two types. Meron tayong tinatawag na statutory consolidation and meron tayong tinatawag na statutory merger. So, under statutory consolidation, nagko-combine yung dalawang entity. For example, si A and si B. magko-combine sila. Kapag nag-combine sila, magkakaroon ng new legal entity. For example, ang name ng company nila is C Company. So, mawawala itong si A and si B, magkakaroon ng bago or tawag ito, new legal entity. Under statutory merger naman is inaabsorb ng isang business yung isang business. So, for example, si A and si B, kapag na-absorb siya, nagkakaroon ng sole surviving entity. So, it's either A or si B but not both. So, ang magiging result niyan kapag nag-merge sila, say, A company ang magsa-survive. So, ang tawag sa kanya, sole surviving entity. B ceases to exist, but still, B company can be a division of the surviving entity. So, ganun ang statutory consolidation and statutory merger. Now, under naman sa acquisition of outstanding shares, yun nga kanina, meron tayong tinatawag na controlling interest and meron tayong tinatawag na non-controlling interest. So, si controlling interest, siya ngayon yung acquirer kasi nga, yung in-acquire niya na shares is more than 50%. Now, ang mangyayari ngayon, magkakaroon ng parent and subsidiary relationship between the two. Again, magkakaroon ng parent and subsidiary. Controlling interest being the parent and the non-controlling interest as the subsidiary. So now, let's proceed to the steps for business combination. So, meron tayong steps na dapat sundan for business combination. So, first step is that dapat i-identify natin kung sino yung acquirer. Identify the acquirer. Kung sino yung bumili. Ito ay isa sa mga pinaka-importanteng bagay na dapat malaman kapag nagkakaroon ng business combination kung sino si acquirer. Number 2, again, si acquirer, siya yung nag-obtain ng control. Yun ang dapat ang tandaan. Next, number 2, determine the acquisition date. So, kailan ba ang acquisition date? It is the date when the acquirer obtains control. Acquirer obtains control of the other business. Bakit importante yung acquisition date? Kasi nga, on the acquisition date, or the moment na nagkaroon ng business combination, the net assets that are being acquired or the shares that are being acquired by the acquirer are measured at or should be measured at fair value. So, hindi pwedeng naka-book value yung mga net assets na yan. Dapat naka-fair value. And magiging based din ito ng ating measurement period. So, mas maiintindihan natin to sa mga next natin na discussion. Number 3, recognize and measure the assets acquired, the liabilities assumed, and any non-controlling interest. So again, number 3, recognize and measure the identified assets acquired or the liabilities assumed, or if in case of stock acquisition, kung meron tayong non-controlling interest. Now again, itong recognize natin na mga assets, liabilities, and NCI, kanino ito? Sa part ito ni acquiree, yung binili, yung entity na binili. So again, these are measured at fair value. Number 4, step 4 is next is NCI. How do we measure NCI? Now we have two methods to record NCI or the non-controlling interest. So first, at fair value, and the second one is through the proportionate share of acquirees identifiable assets. So later on magbibigay tayo ng example nito. So step number 4 is determine or the determination and computation of the consideration given. So kapag sinabing consideration given, ito yung binayad ni acquirer. So consideration given can be in the form of cash, pwede din naman non-cash or property ang ibayad, pwede din shares of stocks, and pwede din through issuance of debt instrument or incurrence of liability. Again, pag nagkaroon ng business combination, pwede ipambayad ang cash, pwedeng property, pwedeng shares, and pwedeng through issuance of debt instrument. So, aside sa consideration given, meron tayong tinatawag na contingent consideration. So, kapag sinabing contingent consideration, it is an agreement to issue additional consideration in the form of an asset or stocks at a later date if specified events occur. It is measured at its acquisition date, fair value. So, ibig sabihin, aside dito sa consideration given, meron tayong mga tinatawag na contingent consideration or ibig sabihin mga pasobrang bayad if in case ma-justify na yung net assets or shares na binili is nag-increase yung kanyang value within the measurement period. So normally, measurement period is 1 year from the acquisition date. So last step for business combination is recognition and measurement of goodwill or gain from bargain purchase. So paano natin ma-recognize and ma-measure si goodwill or kung nagkaroon ng gain from bargain purchase? Now, it is the difference of goodwill or bargain purchase is equal to consideration given plus NCI in case of stock acquisition. Ibabawas natin yung ating fair value of net assets. So again, makukuha natin si goodwill or the gain from bargain purchase kapag ibinawas natin o ang difference ni consideration given plus NCI in case of stock acquisition, ibabawas natin siya sa fair value ng net assets. Now, paano malalaman kung ang nakuha natin ay gain from bargain purchase o goodwill? Okay. Malalaman natin na goodwill or gain from bargain purchase yung i-recognize natin kapag ito ang mga dapat tandaan. Kapag si fair value of net assets is mas maliit or less than the consideration given. Ibig sabihin, yung nabiling net assets ni acquirer is maliit yung amount. For example, 100. Tapos, yung binayad ni acquirer is 150. So, sa part ni acquirer, lugi siya doon ng 50 pesos. So, ibig sabihin, meron itong goodwill. So, kapag tinanong tayo kung magkano yung goodwill natin, 50 pesos. So, ganun lang. Fair value of net assets is less than the consideration given. Ibig sabihin yung 50,000 doon, yung 50 pesos doon, goodwill yun na binayaran ni acquirer. Next, kapag si fair value naman of net assets is greater than, mas malaki, kesa sa ibinayad ni acquirer. For example, dito 170. Tapos, yung ibinayad ni acquirer is 150. So, kapag ganun, mas konti yung ibinayad kesa sa amount ng binili, gain yun. So, dun na kapag tinanong tayo kung magkano ang goodwill or magkano ang gain from bargain purchase, kapag ganito ang scenario, ibig sabihin, yung business combination ay nagkaroon ng bargain purchase. So, kapag tinanong kung magkano yung gain from bargain purchase, we have 20 pesos. Now, let's go to the important differences in business combination of these two terms here under full PFRS and under SMEs. Ibig sabihin ng SMEs, small, medium enterprises. So, magkaiba yung ating treatment ng goodwill and direct cost under these two standards. Now, si goodwill under PFRS, we do not amortize it. But if it can be reliably measured, but if there are indicators that the goodwill is being impaired, so subject siya or tested siya for impairment. Again, goodwill is tested for impairment, but it is not amortized. While in SME or under small medium enterprises, goodwill is being amortized. So, ina-amortize siya within its estimated useful life. Now, kung hindi naman given yung kanyang estimated useful life, it is assumed that the life of the goodwill is within 10 years. So, i-amortize natin siya within 10 years under kay SMEs. And again, also tested for impairment if there are indicators that the goodwill is being impaired. Again, dito is tested lamang for impairment. Pero dito kay SMEs, ina-amortize. Number 2 is we have the direct cost. Kapag sinabing direct cost, ito yung mga cost or expenses na ginastos ni acquirer para magkaroon ng business combination. So, kapag ganito, dapat under sa full PFRS, direct cost is charged to expense or charged to profit or loss. Pero under SMEs, direct cost will be part of the consideration given. So, ganun siya. Again, direct cost under full PFRS is charged to expense. Under SMEs, it will form part of the consideration given. Now, let's proceed to the example na ibinigay ko doon sa inyong mga materials. Now, let's read. Mitch acquires assets and liabilities. COVID acquires assets and liabilities of Corona Company on January 20, 2020. To obtain these shares, COVID pays 400,000 pesos and issues 10,000 shares of 20 pesos par value ordinary shares on this date. COVID's stock had a fair value of 36 pesos per share on that date. COVID also pays 15,000 pesos to a local investment firm for arranging the transaction. An additional 10,000 pesos was paid by COVID in share issuance costs. The book value for both COVID and Corona as of January 20, 2020 are presented below. So, binigay na yung mga fair value ng kanilang assets, liabilities, and their equity. Now, in addition, Corona holds a fully amortized trademark that still retains a 40,000 value. So, assuming the combination is accounted for as an acquisition, immediately after the acquisition, in the statement of financial position of COVID, what amount will be reported for goodwill? So, question number 1, ang tinatanong is kung yung sa part ni COVID or ni acquirer. Again, step number 1, identify the acquirer. So, ang acquirer ngayon is si COVID kasi siya yung bumili. Binili niya si Corona. So, first step, identify the acquirer. Step 2, determine the acquisition date. Yung acquisition date natin is January 20, 2020. Third is identify the or recognize and measure the identifiable assets acquired, liabilities assumed, or the NCI in case of stock acquisition. So, identify muna natin yung mga assets and liabilities. So, since given naman, pakitingnan na lang dyan. Next is, identify na natin yung amount ng ating goodwill. Again, goodwill or gain from bargain purchase is equal to consideration given. Ibawas natin yung ating fair value of net assets. So, now, how much is the consideration transferred? Magkano ba yung binayad ni COVID? So, sabi dito, COVID pays 400,000 pesos. Nag-issue siya ng 10,000 shares. Again, kapag binayad, magbe-base tayo sa fair value. So, 36. So, 10,000 times 36 is 360,000. So, plus 360, ibig sabihin meron tayong consideration given na 760,000. Now, let's go to the fair value of net assets. So, fair value of net assets, ito yung net assets ni acquiree. So, fair value of assets ni net acquiree, meron siyang cash na 80, meron siyang 160 na receivables, meron din siyang inventory of 300, land 130, buildings of 280, equipment 75, accounts payable. Since accounts payable, ibabawas natin. And si long-term liabilities of 300,000. So, wag natin kalimutan na meron sa note. In addition, Corona holds a fully amortized trademark that still retains a 40,000 pesos value. So, kahit na ang kanyang trademark is fully amortized, na ibig sabihin zero na. Pero, kung pagbabasehin natin ang kanyang fair value, meron pa siyang amount na, o meron pa siyang value na 40,000. So, i-add natin yun. So, ang total ng kanyang fair value of net assets is 705,000. Now, the fair value of net assets is 705. The consideration given of COVID is 760. So, sino ang mas malaki? So, mas malaki si consideration given. So, ibig sabihin, ganito, fair value of net assets is less than the consideration given. Ibig sabihin, meron tayong goodwill. So, ang goodwill natin, the difference of this is 55,000 pesos. So, the rest of the questions are self-explanatory since I've already given you the solution for the solution for each of the problems or each of the questions. So, kayo na bahala ang magbasa. Nandito lang din naman yan. Again, kapag may question dito, i-add mo lang yung asset. Kung asset ba ang tinanong, i-add mo lang yung asset ni COVID at saka ni Corona, again, at fair value. So, sige. Jump tayo dito sa number 6 question. So, question number 6, what amount will be reported for ordinary shares? So, ordinary shares, so si COVID, meron siyang 1.2 million. Yung consideration given niya, meron doon, nag-issue siya ng shares, issuance of shares, which is 10,000 times, again, since ang question is ordinary shares, we always measure it at par value. So, plus 200,000, we have 1,400,000. Number 7, question is, what amount will be reported for retained earnings? So, si COVID, meron siyang existing amount na 1,080,000. Ibabawas dito yung direct acquisition cost. Kanina, sabi natin na yung direct acquisition cost is charged to profit or loss or specifically to the expense account. Now, since we don't have any nominal accounts present for the moment, kasi nga naka-fair value ang lahat, and our acquisition date is January 20, beginning of the year, so ibig sabihin, wala talagang nominal accounts dito. Kaya, pwede na natin siya idiretso sa ating retained earnings. So, binabawas yan. 1,080,000 less 15,000, we have 1,065,000. Question number 8, what amount will be reported for share premium? Again, walang given para kay COVID. I-add natin yung portion or yung excess of par. Yung 36 na fair value ng shares, ibabawas natin yung 20 na par. So, meron tayong 16 pesos times 10,000 shares na share premium. Less dun yung share issuance cost na 10,000. So, that is, ang total share premium natin is 150,000 pesos.